What's up, everybody? Welcome to J and J Podcast, where you meet J and J. My name is John. His name is John, and we're excited to have you guys a part of these conversations that spark curiosity, ignite creativity, and dive deep into the world of leadership and innovation, culture, business, and other personal growth. We are your hosts. Once again, my name is John. This is John, bringing you thought provoking discussions, insightful interviews, and fresh perspective on different areas across the world. Whether you're tuning in for inspiration or simply trying to learn something new, you're in the right place. So grab your headphones, get ready for an awesome, exciting episode with J and J. Mr. John, why don't you go ahead and kick us off, sir?
Yeah, so what I want to do is I just want to talk about what the vision is here. Is like John said, that we're going to just talk about wide variety of subjects. And tonight we're going to talk about leadership development versus influence and how that is in our personal life, how that is in our business life, and how that is maybe in our relationships that we have. And I think leadership development and influence, they go hand in hand. So I just want to go ahead and kind of like give a definition of leadership development. It basically is a process that helps people improve their ability to lead others within an organization. And I feel that sometimes the organization, maybe a church, maybe your family, maybe your business, because a lot of people, what they do is they go directly to business. And I think it spreads a little bit more into our everyday life. And how are we basically leading others? So, a couple of things I want to talk about is maybe achieving results. John, you want to talk a little bit about achieving results?
You know, achieving results is so weird as a leader, right? Because at the beginning of it, you want to write down your goals, right? You gotta
Yeah.
have goals to achieve those results. You gotta go over leaps and bounds. You have to not be afraid of failure, right? So when you want to achieve your goals and your results, I think you first have to create goals in themselves. And that as a leader can be different things. That could be team performance improvements, that could be self improvements, that could be crisis management and problem solving, that could be a strategic vision as an individual. It really depends as a leader what your goals and the results that you want to get from it. I mean, John, from achieving results, you've been in many leadership positions, man. Like what are some important things do you think as a leader you need to do to achieve your results?
I think building relationships is one key. Sometimes we forget that, but I know that when I worked for a corporate company, it was the biggest thing that I saw that was really neat that they talked about was the people sitting in the seats and telling, kind of like moving it up as opposed to the headship moving it down and all the direction and guidelines moving it down. How about the people sitting in the seats moving it up to the top and getting things changed within the organization? I think building relationships not only is in that, but also in friendships. I think it's very important to foster good relationships. People you can trust, people that you can talk to, people that maybe you can go to the gym. Now that it's January and we all want to go to the gym, I'm not going to go to the gym by myself. But if I ask John here, hey, I'm going to encourage you, if you encourage me, let's go to the gym together and maybe achieving results of losing weight or building bulk and that type of thing. But I think it's very important to build those relationships. And John, what do you think about strategic thinking?
Man, if you want to be a good leader, not even a good leader, a great leader, you gotta, you have to have the ability to analyze complex situation and to be able to know what's going to happen in the future. With different challenges and opportunities. You have to be able to make decisions that align with long term goals, and you have to have a critical skill in business leadership and personal development. But I think vision and goal setting is the biggest thing, like I said, with the achieving results. And I think goal and I'm sorry, guys. I think goal setting and vision is very important when it comes to strategic thinking. Even with achieving results, you got to put that at the top of your board every single times. With strategic thinking, that's my opinion. But you also have to analyze your environment. You also have to have scenario planning for the future. Like I said, you have to be able to do critical thinking and problem solving in the moment, which can be very challenging as a leader. Am I right? I'm sure you've had plenty of
Oh
situations.
yeah.
You have to be flexible and be able to be adaptable. And then you also have to be understand how to execute and monitor your goals through this whole situation. So I think strategic thinking isn't just like one small thing, it's a giant web of different things that come together.
Hmm. That's good. Another thing we want to talk about is developing others. I love developing others. Not to put the hammer down on people, but to watch people grow. I know that I've been in youth ministry for, gosh, ever since I was 14. John, you were in youth ministry as well.
Yeah.
And developing others and taking the teenagers and the talent that they have and harnessing that and saying, okay, you guys plan an event. You are the eyes and ears out there among your peers. What is it that you guys would like to do? Now, let's go ahead and help you plan it. And we just oversee it. And I think giving them more power and more permission to plan stuff and to see, hey, look, I can do it.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of times, that's where you come along. And if they have anxiety or I don't know how to do that, that's where you come along and that's where you develop those skills. You can do that in relationships. You can do that in business. You can do that in youth ministry. There's a lot of development. And I think both of us are going to talk about communication because communication now, I'm not married, but you are.
Yeah.
How important is communication?
Are we talking about a business perspective or marriage now?
However you want to go.
No, I mean communication is huge. I mean, especially in the leadership realm, you have to be able to have clarity and transparency. You know, I was actually John's manager at one point in our careers, and I was a very young manager. It was the first time I was ever a manager, and John taught me a lot about being there in the moment instead of trying to look too far ahead and actually take the time to listen to your team members. And I always appreciated that because I always take that going forward. I think I've learned just as an individual, you communicating that to me to be a stronger leader. So I appreciate that.
Thank you.
But leadership communication, you got to be clarity, right? You got to be transparent. You can't be afraid to kind of hit the hammer down, but you don't want to sit on top of a pedestal top everybody.
Right.
You want to be able to get into the trenches and understand how to communicate to individuals, whether it's someone who's a janitor all the way up to somebody who is like the CEO of a company. You got to know how to communicate properly. You also know how to actively listen, right? So when someone's talking to you, you make the eye contact. I'm going to offend some people here, but this generation nowadays, I'm a recruiter, and they all look down at their lap when they communicate with you because they're so used to looking at their cell phones all day long, right? So I think it's very important that as a leadership communication, you have to be able to be an active leader who can actively listen, right? I also think with communication, you gotta be consistent. You gotta learn how to be empathetic to people, and then you have to learn how know when to be inspirational and motivation too, right? So there's so many different topics we could talk all night, John.
Yep. Yeah.
But leadership communication, in my opinion, is just so many different things. You just have to be strong. You have to be confident, but you can't be afraid to fail.
Right.
You can't be afraid to take other people's feedback. So
I think communication is a key, especially for today. I do other things as far as getting on here and trying to encourage other people, encourage social media, whoever's listening. I try to encourage them to the point that, hey, look, I have 2 ears. God gave me 2 ears and 1 mouth. And sometimes what we need to do is we just need to shut our mouth and listen because there's so many people out there that's hurting that give them time to talk. Don't do it this way. Like if I was talking to John, he was telling me something, I'm not going to jump in and be like, okay, well, here's my answer. Because am I really listening? Probably not.
Probably not.
All I'm doing is thinking of my next answer to give you just to make me feel good, but it doesn't make the other person feel good.
Correct. And just like going back to marriage real quick, by the way, you always make sure you listen to the other person. This isn't marriage advice, but I think the best way you can be successful in your marriage is what you just said, though. You want to make sure you want to be open communication. You hear what they say and you repeat it back to them. You know what I mean? And that's how you know someone's listening. That's one thing that I've done with my wife. I was not good at the beginning of our marriage. I would just one ear out the other, and she would tell you that probably to your face. But over time, we learned to communicate to each other better and actually listen to each other and absorb what each other was saying so we can be better for each other as partners. You know what I mean? And in the business world, it's the same way. Like I said, I don't care if you're the janitor coming up to the highest leader of the company. You make sure you take the time to listen to that individual and you repeat back to them what you heard from them. So they know you absorb what they said. And I think that's huge in communication. So,
yeah. Speaking of communication, let's just bring it down to a little bit of fun time.
Oh.
So, what do you think about the Super Bowl?
Oh, man. I mean, the NFL playoffs, this could be a conspiracy and stuff, but I think everyone's going to pick the Chiefs. My opinion, I would love to see Detroit versus Buffalo.
Yep.
I think it'd be fun to see a team like Washington Commanders and maybe versus like the Baltimore Ravens as well.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, in my opinion, the NFL is rigged. I'm probably going to get a lot of controversy saying that out loud. The Chiefs will probably win the Super Bowl anyway. So,
yeah.
What about you?
I totally agree. I mean, the Chiefs are kind of like, and we'll probably get a lot of comments, which is fine. Hey, that's part of communication, is opening it up so that we could hear comments on what you guys think, and also maybe what subjects you want to talk about. But I would like to see Detroit Lions. I would like to see them go forward. It's kind of like Kansas had their time, and so it's time for another team.
Who's your favorite team, John, again?
Well, let's just put it this way. I have Cleveland Browns.
Oh.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, man.
And then I also Jacksonville Jaguars.
Okay. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, so I have two losing teams, but I'm sure they're going to be picking first in the draft.
Do you think they have good communication?
Well, I think the coach for Jacksonville Jaguars has a different kind of communication now that he's gone.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think even when you're a team player, speaking of that, being a team player, look at Ohio State and what they're doing.
Yep.
They've only got one game left against Notre Dame.
Yep.
What do you think they're going to do?
You know, I think Ohio State got a little fire under them after losing that team up north. You know what I mean? We won't say their name on this podcast, by the way, that maize and blue team. But I think that really lit them a fire, because I'll tell you right now, the gauntlet that Ohio State's gone through just to get to the national title compared to Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Tennessee, who they play, Oregon, and then they played Texas.
Yeah.
I think that was the most challenging path.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Notre Dame had Penn State, which, not a bad team, don't get me wrong. I apologize, I forget the other two teams. John, if you remember, that's fine. But I think Notre Dame had an easier path, and I think Ohio State has a fire under them because I lost to Michigan.
And they played Oregon Ducks again.
Yeah.
After that and beat them.
I know.
So I mean, they're doing good. So that's our kind of like we said, we'll talk different subjects. We'll talk a little bit about some business things. We'll talk about some sports. We can also talk about whatever you want us to, and we'll tackle that subject. So, John, let me.
Yeah, I mean, go Buckeyes. I went to University of Toledo, but I hope Ohio State brings it home because, let's be honest with each other, Pickering. Ohio State fan base, we're probably the most cocky fan base in all of America, right? I hate to say that, but it's true.
Yeah.
But I hope we win because the SEC is falling apart, and I love it. And I love seeing Alabama fall to the ground this year. So Go Buckeyes.
Speaking of Buckeyes, and speaking of kind of like where they're coming from today, I mean, I've read some things on, that they go out there and pray.
Yeah.
And so I think that prayer is very important. Um, and I think that, that putting God in your agenda and in your life is very important. One of my favorite verses is Philippians 4:13, which is I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Um, and that just shows me that, hey, look, I may try it in myself, but I may not. I may fumble. I may stop. But you know what? The biggest thing, especially with leadership, is one quote that I believe John Maxwell said is if you think you're a leader, look behind you. And if nobody's following you, there's something going on right there.
Absolutely. I agree with you.
And don't be afraid to fail. The only thing that you can do is if there is no failure, it's when you fail and you don't get back up and go back at it again. I could tell you stories about my life that you would be pretty much amazed on. I mean, both of us could tell stories on how are we here today and doing this. So we just want to encourage you. What's your favorite verse, John?
Yeah, and going back to real quick, going back to like the prayer and sports and stuff nowadays, even 20 years ago, if you remember, when Tim Tebow, how much controversy he got for just kneeling down and praying and how many people ridiculed him.
Yeah.
I love seeing nowadays how many people in the sports, especially college students, in the professional realm, how they all like kneel down and pray now and not afraid of it. 20 years ago, even 10 years ago, you would be ridiculed for that. You remember that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So I absolutely love seeing this younger generation not being afraid to talk about God, not talking about their faith in Jesus. And I love that they're not just like slandering it in people's faces though, too. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like, haha, I'm a believer in Christ.
Right.
Look at me, right? But I do love this generation, how they're bringing God and Jesus back in the sports realm. For me, Jeremiah 29:11 is probably the most important verse in my life, not only because it's helped me through my entire journey with Christ, dating back to my teenage years to when I got married with my wife, but it's probably most important. So Jeremiah 29:11 says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper for you and not harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future." I'm not as good as John at remembering verses, but so you might see me read stuff off a lot. But this verse, is a reminder that believers in God have a purpose and a positive plan for their lives. One is filled with hope and promise. I love that verse.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I've had so many times in my life where I was in dark moments, depressed, sad. And I just, I had this verse on a post-it note on my wallet, and I pull it out and read it, and I'll be like, God's got me.
Yeah.
So.
And I would even say for the youth, I mean, with Philippians 4:13, a lot of times before I went in to take a test, I would say, okay, God, your word says that I can do all things, not some things, but all things through you who gives me strength. And it's his strength. And when I take those tests, I rely on his strength that I will make it. I will make it through my day. I will make it through those tests. I will make it through whatever it is that God will give us strength. And John, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, like John said at the beginning of this, we're excited to start this podcast. It's exciting for us. We're brand new at this. Give us your feedback. You're not going to hurt our feelings. Trust me. Me and John have probably been called the worst things you can imagine. But
True.
we're excited to do this because we truly want to influence each other.
Yeah.
And influence others and be leaders for others. And like I said at the beginning, we're here. We're going to talk business. We're going to talk sports. We're going to talk about inspiration. We're definitely going to talk about God. We're going to tell you different stories in our lives. We're just really excited to be a part of this journey with you guys, and just thank you so much for tuning in with us today. And we hope you find it insightful and inspiring. If you enjoyed it, like I said, subscribe to this, rate us, leave us a review. It really helps us reach more listeners. And we'd love to hear your thoughts because, like I said, this is the first podcast. We'll be dropping episode 2 and episode 3 once every other week. And yeah, John, you got anything else, man?
Yeah, like John said, we really appreciate you guys listening in. Your comments are going to be very important. We're both an open book. I like to learn from people. I don't have everything all figured out. But again, maybe you guys got some comments that can help us grow. Maybe something we never thought about. So again, what is it? J&J?
J&J Podcast. Until next time, take care, stay curious, and keep learning. Later, guys.